Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to FishOfHex. My name is Travis. Today we're going to be talking about the reef tank ugly phase. Is it real or can it be prevented altogether? So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and first talk about what the ugly phase is. Now, a lot of people consider it to be the break-in time when you're first starting your reef tank, upwards to 6 months to a year of just elevated nutrients, nitrates and phosphates, water parameters aren't stable, you have diatoms or algae all over the place. This is what people consider to be the ugly phase. Now, before we get into some of the ways to prevent this from happening, let's go ahead and first take a quick look at some of the reasons why you have an ugly phase. Now, the number one reason is excess nutrients. This means elevated nitrates and phosphates. Now, I'll dive into this a little bit deeper, but understand if you have excess nutrients or algae in your tank, there's always an underlying reason. It just doesn't happen because it's supposed to happen. It's because you're either not doing something correctly or you just need to make some adjustments to your daily routine. Now, the next reason why you'll have an ugly phase is an overstocked tank. Simple. You have too many fish or too many inverts in your system. The next reason is not properly cycling the aquarium, which we'll talk about here in just a second. And then the final reason, which has to do with the previous, is using uncured rock. So those are the main 4 reasons why you're going to have an ugly phase. So let's go and move on to some ways that you can prevent it altogether. Now, when it comes to preventing the ugly phase, it really starts from the beginning when you're just starting your reef tank. Now, some of the tips that I give you throughout this process can still help you if you're currently in the ugly phase. So don't worry, you can still get rid of it sooner than waiting for 6 months to a year. Trust me. Now, the first thing you want to do to prevent this is cure your rock before adding it to the main display. Now, I will talk about an exception here in a second, but ideally you want to take all of your rock, put it in a brute trash can. You want to fill it up with salt water 1.025, and then you want to add a heater and some type of flow. Now, I do have an entire video in the 300-gallon playlist on how to cure rock, how I did it here for my setup, and I will link that video in the description. But either way, you want to cure that rock for 1 month to 3 months, allowing everything on the rock to break down, process nutrients, perform big water changes, get all that stuff out of there, and allow the rock to build up the beneficial bacteria before adding it to your main display. Now, the exception that I'm talking about is for those of you who have cleaner rock like Reef Saver or something that is not been in the ocean or not in a previous tank. You can go ahead and put that rock in your main display before curing it. You can aquascape dry or wet. I prefer to aquascape my tank dry and then go ahead and use glue and rods and all sorts of stuff to make it the way I want, and then I fill it up with salt water 1.025. Now, at that point, if you're going to do this, you have to keep the lights off. You have to keep any Refugium lights off. You can turn your skimmer on if you want, just to kind of break it in if it's new, but you got to leave the tank alone for a couple months. Now, the reason why I don't recommend this is because most of you guys are just kind of starting out. The last thing you want to do is stare at a bare tank with just rock in it for a couple months. Nobody wants to do that. I've been doing this for 6 years. I don't want to do that, trust me. But I will be forced to do it on the new build. We'll talk about that later, but it's going to have to happen for me, unfortunately. But either way, you have to let it sit. You can add a food source or add a piece of shrimp in a mesh bag to kickstart the cycling process. And my power heads are in the background making a ton of noise. Sorry about that. But anyway, you're going to want to let it sit and process and let the beneficial bacteria to build up, and then at that point your tank will be cycled. Now, we can quickly touch base on that. How do you know if your tank is cycled? Well, if you have a 0 ammonia, 0 nitrites, only nitrates on the test kit, and only phosphates on the test kit, then you know your tank is cycled and you can start moving on to other things. Now, the second thing you can do to prevent the ugly phase is have the right equipment. Now, I like to think of building my reef tank like building a house. You're not going to build your house on a sand pile. You're going to build it on a stable foundation. And that's what your equipment is for your reef tank, your stable foundation. And specifically, we're going to talk about the RODI system. Now, this is extremely important. And yesterday during a Skype call, it just kind of drove it home even more. That's the third person in the last couple months that has the same issue. Excess nutrients, algae all over the tank, because they have bad water. They're getting their water from either the local fish store, which is not 0 TDS, it's not very clean, or they are not taking care of their current RODI setup and they're having issues with it and they're getting dirty water. So, foundational aspect of a reef tank, make sure you have an RODI system, it is working properly, and you have 0 TDS coming out, making sure you have the very best water possible going into your display tank. The next important piece of equipment is your skimmer. Make sure it's rated for at least the water volume, if not double the water volume that you currently have. Now, I always recommend at least double, if not triple, your current water volume, because that allows you to get away with a little bit more fish, a little bit more stock, and you have some leeway for how powerful that skimmer is versus how much you got going on in your display. So make sure you have the proper skimmer for your setup. Now, the next thing isn't necessarily a specific piece of equipment, but the system as a whole. When it comes to building one, build it in a way that it's going to be able to process nutrients efficiently. For me personally, a big refugium is always the way to go. I find that if I have a big enough refugium, I have my nutrients controlled, and I don't have to use things like GFO or biopellets or any other system to keep my nutrients in check. No NOPOX, no extra chemicals, nothing. Simply good feeding habits with a nice size refugium seems to take care of all of those issues. So keep that in mind when you're building your setup. Okay, so the next thing that you can do to prevent the ugly phase is do not add fish to an uncycled aquarium. It is cruel. Don't do it. Now, when you start to add fish to a cycled aquarium, make sure you go slow. You don't want to be adding fish too quickly because not only does that stress out the fish, but it also causes instability in the water. That means the beneficial bacteria needs to have time to keep up with the additional bioload. You can run into ammonia spikes, which causes damage to the gills of the fish, but you can also have excess nutrients, which will lead to excess algae and issues down the road. So just take your time, no rush. You'll be good to go. And make sure you're quarantining your fish. I'm just going to throw that in there. All right, so the next thing you can do to prevent the ugly phase is do not add coral foods or supplements when you don't have enough coral to justify it. This is a huge problem. I mean, I see it everywhere, all over Facebook, all over the forums. People have 1 or 2 heads of frog spawn, and they're in there every single day, slamming it full of reefroids, all this crazy stuff, trying to get mice and shrimp in there, all this junk. No. You don't need to do that. Now, yes, I have a ton of stuff that I dose to the 300/500 gallons of SPS that we have in here, but that's different for me. I have enough coral to justify dosing aminos and acropower and fuel and all this other stuff. I have the coral that will suck that crap up. If you only have a few things in your tank, it's not going to work out. You're just adding extra things which are not going to be used, and then they're going to contribute to the excess nutrients, and then here we go, snowballing down to one of the underlying reasons why you have the ugly phase or algae and all sorts of stuff within your tank. So if you have a few pieces of coral, just don't even bother. No program, no nothing. Just do your water changes, enjoy the tank, grow more coral, and then at some point you can start dosing that stuff. Okay, moving on to the last thing that you can do to prevent the ugly phase, and we've talked about it pretty much throughout the entire video, and that is stay on top of your nutrients. This is your nitrates and your phosphates. Keep them in the correct range. What is that range? 3 to 5 parts per million of nitrates and 0.07 to 0.15 of phosphates. Stay within that range. If you find that you are at 0, then you either need to feed more or dose, which, by the way, I saw that stuff on my website. You can dose to get in that correct range, because the last thing you want to do is stay at 0, because that's going to cause a whole lot of issues that we already talked about. Now, if you find that you're at the higher end of the range and you can't get the levels down even with water changes, look at what you're contributing to the reef tank. Are you feeding too much? Do you have too many fish? Do you have a bad source of water? There's always an underlying reason why you have excess nutrients. It doesn't just magically happen. It's not because it's part of the reef tank. It's not a natural thing. Get on top of your nutrients, control them, and you won't have an ugly phase, period. So, in conclusion, the ugly phase is not something that is normal. It's not something that is acceptable when first starting a reef tank. It is for those of you who want to skip steps and you don't want to have the patience. That's normal for you. If you want to bypass everything that I said, then yes, you will have an ugly phase. You will lose precious time on growing coral. If you spend an entire year in the quote-unquote ugly phase, you just lost an entire year's worth of growth. So keep that in mind. Now, one thing that you guys have to remember is that everything in this hobby can be prevented with good habits and patience, period. If anybody tells you different, they're dumb. I'll just leave it at that. So, with that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to add anything, feel free to put it in the comment section. If you want to support the channel, check out FishOfHex.com. I have a ton of coral on sale. There's a ton of orders going on. It's awesome. I appreciate it. But if you don't want to buy coral and you just want to support me, hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and put a comment below. All right? So, until next time, I'll see you guys later. All right? Peace.